Hi everybody. So for this mini lesson, I want to go over a little bit about the structure and expectations for an analysis paper, particularly the analysis that you are going to be writing for Project 3. Just like I did for the response paper, I've got a couple of key points that I want to reiterate. And instead of having a screenshot, I have the assignment pulled up right here. I'm just going to talk through a few things. And then I'm going to spend the rest of the time looking at an example paper. So let's get right to it. Okay, so just a refresher, we talked about this in one of our previous videos, but an analysis paper asks you to do more than a summary or a response, though you need to be able to do both in the analysis. So let me say that again. An analysis is more than a summary or a response, but you still need to be able to summarize and you still need to be able to respond. So here's what we're going to talk about really quickly. The analysis breaks down a text into its component parts and connects those parts in terms of a particular claim or point of view or theoretical lens. For your paper, I've given you 3 potential claims to make. And I haven't told you what to claim, but here's what we're going to do. These are like the text to world connections that I'm going to describe here. These are like your anchors. And then you get to choose what side of the boat you fish off of for your bits and pieces that you pull out of hooks. Does that make sense? But you got to pick one of these options to anchor your boat. Option 1 would be language. And this is how you would do an analysis if you're going to go about using language. You would break down Bell Hooks's argument about how we as academics need to keep close to home through the lens of language. She talks a lot about her particular choices to use different kinds of language, and she talks about how academia treats language, and all of those examples that you could like break out of her essay could help you say something about Hooks in terms of language. So an argument that you might make about Hooks could go something like, it could be an answer to one of these questions, right? What does it mean that Hooks writes her argument as a chapter in a scholarly book? She argues a lot for not using academic language. What does it mean that she's publishing in a scholarly publication? Answering that question could be your thesis statement. Or any of these other questions could be your thesis statement in terms of their answer. Same thing with theory. If you're going to think about how Hooks talks about class and race, what does it mean that she connects her personal experience to these broader theoretical ideas about class divides, race divides? Answering that question could be your thesis statement. Or you could talk about Hooks's role in education. So answering any of these questions, what is the effect of Hooks's personal narrative of being in school to the argument? Again, we're talking about her argument. We're breaking down her text, but we're using this question as our anchor, and the answer will become our thesis statement. And then, as we're working to answer those questions based off of whatever thesis statement we develop, we'll use one of these articles to help us make text-to-text connections. Now, I've said this a couple of times now just by talking through the assignment. Let's look at an actual essay. Okay, so this essay, as you can see, it's fully formatted in MLA style. We start the essay and we have a lot of the same moves that we've been practicing this whole semester. There's the introduction of the title, the introduction of the author. there is a summary of her main claim right off the bat, right? And then in this introductory paragraph, I'll just read it really quickly to you and then we'll kind of talk about it. We see the intro here. In her essay, Keeping Close to Home, Class and Education, Bell Hooks argues that students and instructors in academia need to maintain relationships with their home communities, regardless of how they may climb socioeconomically. She uses her own life experiences to demonstrate that it is not only possible to move successfully through academia to a new career and social possibilities, but that it is also possible to invest in relationships at home while doing so. Hooks makes her arguments while also outlining what she terms a counter-hegemonic value system that is rooted in Southern Black culture, which she says should provide the framework for scholars to engage in the maintaining of home communal relations. All of this, all that I just read, is leading us step by step. Part of the things that are talked about here are going to form the body of the essay. We'll see in a second. But here is the thesis. Naming and describing this value system in action allows Hooks to provide a framework for the networks of relationships she argues for. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to look through the rest of this essay and we're going to look to see how this writer talks about the naming, the describing of the counter-hegemonic value system, and how that can help people keep close to home. Okay, so we start out with a little bit more detailed summary about this value system. In her essay, Hooks names the counter-hegemonic value systems of marginalized people, primarily working-class Black people in the southern U.S. Whoops, that probably should be cited there, huh? She cites the work of Carol Stack as the beginning of her thinking about this system, but that the implications go far beyond merely naming it. Now, keep your eyes peeled for where this writer is doing their citations correctly, except for that last one. We've got page numbers in here, and when there's a question of which author is being cited, the last name of the author is included in the citation. Gotta have these. Okay, so this paragraph that we're looking at here is kind of delving into some summary. It's breaking apart her argument, so we're not going paragraph by paragraph through Hooks's entire essay. This is really important. Analysis is a strategic smash and grab job. You're not going step by step by step, sentence by sentence. You're picking out the bits of the argument that she's making that fit and help you make your analysis. So the paper is not, Bell Hooks's essay is not in control. You, the author, are in control. And what you want to argue for in this analysis is what we will do. Okay, I want to show you some other things here. So I'm going to skip down. Throughout the essay, Hooks provides examples for this value system, and she calls academics to consider how to emulate her. One key area where she describes this value system is in the language she uses to communicate within and outside of academia. She deliberately works to integrate her home community language use within the academy, arguing, and now I want to point out something right here. This is called a block quote. I might have pointed it out before, but basically, if a quote is 1, 2, 3, more than 4 lines long, you make a hard return and you indent it. And weirdly, you know how always I'm like, put the period outside of the citation. You don't do that with a block quote. It's completely backwards, bonkers, bananas, but that's what you do. Now, I also want to point something out that this writer's doing. We are gearing up to go into this block quote, right? It's a big quote from Hooks. Learning to listen to different voices, yada, yada, yada. We become estranged and alienated from our past. A lot of students, that was me clapping, by the way, a lot of students stop here, and then they go on to their next paragraph. But this student, look what they did. Here, Hooks states that resisting the hegemony is as easy and as hard as maintaining practice and fluency in the speech patterns we grew up with. Because of the insidious nature of the racist, classist, misogynistic forces, these two sentences are the writer's own words explaining and analyzing the quote that they just used. This is a key move that you can steal and put in your own analysis papers. Let's keep going though. All right, here's where we get to the text-to-text connection. Check it out. Hooks is not alone in her identification of an alternative value system that might help those wishing to resist the hegemony. Bam, here's our second author, our second title introduced. Ibram X. Kendi writes in the Atlantic article, woo, that needs to be italicized, right? Because that's the publication, and then the title of the article gets quotation marks. We know this. Ibram X. Kendi writes in the Atlantic article, we are still living in a slaveholders' republic, that there is a clear division between how people in the United States conceive of freedom. One concerns the individual, the other concerns the community. All right, now, I want you to notice something here. We transition from Hooks to Kendi at the beginning of this paragraph. We continue on in the next paragraph. This whole paragraph is sort of summarizing and taking bits from Kendi's argument. And then, so we have like two whole paragraphs that are our text-to-text connection, just looking at that second author. Then we start to see them getting put together. Kendi, like Hooks, ties the conflicts clearly demonstrated in their areas of focus to issues of class and race. So this is where we start to see that this writer chose the theory option, and they're talking about class and race and this counter-hegemonic value system throughout this whole paper. So now in the next few paragraphs, I want you to notice how this writer will connect Kendi in this sentence to Hooks in this sentence. Did you see that? The business owners Kendi reports who are pushing for reopening seem to care nothing for the community of all Americans, many of whom do not own businesses. In the same vein, so that's a nifty little transition phrase. In the same vein, Hooks sees black and white academics alike seeming to care nothing for folks outside of the institutions where they work and publish, even if those folks are their own families. Hooks argues that. And then we have another black quote. And then, oh, beauty of beauties, a sentence again after the black quote, rounding out this paragraph, right? It's like here is the top piece of bread. Here's a little bit of peanut butter. I don't know, whatever you like. And then here's the bottom piece of bread. And it's, again, tying together Kendi and Hooks, just like they started at the beginning of this paragraph. In both essays, Kendi and Hooks alike point to an individual of privilege exercising choice in what to privilege, who to hear, and what to care about. Oh, and here's another nice, nifty little transition word, furthermore. That's kind of a stuffy one, so if it doesn't feel natural to you, don't force it, but if you like it, go for it. So now this paragraph as well is combining the Kendi essay with the Hooks essay and doing like kind of compare and contrast within this paragraph, right? In 2020, Kendi reinterprets and validates the division Hooks draws between hegemonic and counter-hegemonic value systems in 1989. So here's where we're really seeing that Kendi is agreeing with Hooks. You remember how we said we were going to need to use response skills and those text-to-text connections? This is where we can kind of see that in action. All right, so I just want to kind of take us down now to the conclusion, where we, again, are talking back and forth between Hooks and Kendi. So Hooks emphasizes what the solution is, and Kendi also agrees and names it what he names it. So even if people don't use the same terms, if they're talking about the same idea, you as the writer can say, Hooks's counter-hegemonic value system, she calls it that. That's a mouthful. Kendi names it the idea of community freedom. It's a different term for essentially a separate value system from the oppressive, hegemonic existing value system in the country. All right, so we've got this nice conclusion, kind of wrapping things up together, really hammering home the connection. Really nice works cited. I'm going to leave it here for a second just so you can soak it in. We've got the Bell Hooks citation. We've got the Kendi citation. And that is a pretty strong analysis paper, I would say. Okay, so I hope that this helps you as you continue on your drafting journey this week and revising. If you need to revise anything in your paper based on this mini lesson, go for it. If you need to talk to me about this mini lesson, if it brought up some questions for you about your own paper, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or set up a Zoom meeting with me. Otherwise, have a good week. Happy revising.